Welcome to the Crawcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and these are my predictions for Week 11 of the NFL season. The first game is the Washington Commanders versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and this should be a really good game. Both these teams are really good teams, and they're fighting for what could potentially be the winner of the division right here. I think the Commanders are going to win. I do think the Eagles are a better team overall. I think their offense and defense are better, but I think the coaching of the Commanders is better. And I just think the Commanders' scheme works really well against the Eagles. They seem to be struggling a bit against running quarterbacks, and just overall, I think the Commanders are going to win. But this should be a very exciting Thursday night football game and really could go either way. The next game is the Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers are going to win. And let me say, this is probably the most important game of this weekend because it has so many outstanding ramifications, it feels like. This is like the Super Bowl for both teams, and especially for the Bears. Now, hear me out. The reason why I say that is because the Packers have owned the Bears. Matt LaFleur has never lost to the Bears in his coaching career, in his head coaching career. And so you have the thing of ownership where it's like Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears, Jordan Love owns the Bears. Now you have the new Caleb Williams, and that's going to be the question. Does Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers own Caleb Williams and the Bears? Or is this a new era where with Caleb Williams, the Bears are not going to get owned by the Packers anymore? So, this is very important for both teams to win, just for those wider narrative ramifications. I do think the Packers are going to win because the Bears' offense has just been struggling so much to the point where they're non-existent, and they just fired their offensive coordinator, so maybe that'll make a difference, but who knows. Their defense has actually been pretty solid this season, but overall, I think the Packers are a better team, and most importantly, the Packers have gotten healthier. The Packers have struggled with a lot of injuries throughout this year, and now that they're getting healthier after their bye week, that's really helped them a lot. And then also, I think if the Packers, they just need to clean up their stupid mistakes. I think if they're something like second in the league in drops and like third in the league in penalties, with Dontavian Wicks leading the league in drops, and that's just an issue. And those are things that should be able to clean up. Just don't make any stupid mistakes with drops and penalties, and the Packers should win this game. The next game is the Detroit Lions versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think the Detroit Lions are going to win. The Jaguars are simply one of the worst teams in the NFL, and the Detroit is one of the best. Jared Goff did throw 5 interceptions, and that was terrible. And the Jaguars are starting Mac Jones, who's not looking good. I nearly said the Jaguars just because this feels like a game Detroit's going to lose, because I can't explain it, but it feels like Detroit, they always beat good teams and lose to bad teams. And I nearly said the Jaguars, but even myself, I can't put the Jaguars over the Lions, even though I think this game will be really close. That's just a gut feeling I have that I'm like now I'm starting to convince myself to pick the Jaguars, but no, I just can't do it. I think the Lions are going to win. And it's going to be interesting what the Jaguars do with the number 1 overall pick. I think they'll probably trade it away because they don't need a quarterback and they just need a wider roster of talent rather than just one player. The next game is the Indianapolis Colts versus the New York Jets. I think the Jets are going to win. I was really surprised that the Colts are going back to Anthony Richardson. To me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because you're still in the playoff hunt, and I do think Joe Flacco gives you a better chance at winning games than Anthony Richardson. Even though Joe Flacco did struggle a bit, he was playing against some really good defenses. So I think that should be a little bit of a caveat to his struggles. But overall, Anthony Richardson, I don't think they should give up on him because I do think he has a future and can be their potential future starting quarterback. I just think, well, they're in the playoff hunt and they seem to be on the rise, and the Texans are so far on the downfall. I just think the Colts should keep Joe Flacco in until until they're eliminated from the playoffs. And then the Jets, they need to be 5-1 the remainder of the season effectively, and that seems almost impossible because their schedule is tough and who knows what it's going to do. I am curious if Aaron Rodgers does come back for the 2025 season. I think he probably will, but the question is, will it happen with the Jets? Because I hope this scenario doesn't happen, but this was just kind of a thought I kind of came up with is, listen to this. What if the Jets are like, no, we want a full rebuild. We're not doing Aaron Rodgers again. We're just going to blow everything up and we're going to get rid of everybody, including Aaron Rodgers. Then Sam Darnold continues to struggle with the Vikings, and the Vikings like, okay, we don't want Sam Darnold, and they don't re-sign him. And then the Jets sign or trade for Aaron Rodgers. And then all of a sudden, since they're just a quarterback away from probably winning the Super Bowl, because they have a decent defense and a decent offense, Aaron Rodgers goes to Minnesota. I hope that doesn't happen, and I do think that is unlikely. I think Rodgers will probably want to stay with the Jets, but that's just an interesting thought to entertain. But overall, I think the Jets are going to win because I think the Jets are a decent team. They've just gotten unlucky with missed field goals and just some weird things happening, and especially with those missed field goals. The next game is the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Miami Dolphins. I think the Miami Dolphins will win. The Dolphins' offense is actually looking pretty good, except for when Tua doesn't get injured doing stupid celebrations. Or sorry, not Tua, Tyreek Hill. But the Dolphins, they are looking good, and they're showing like they could have been a good playoff team this year if Tua didn't get injured. And that kind of makes me think like Mike McDaniel might not be a great head coach because he just tried to like fit a square peg into a round hole in the sense that like look at the Packers. When Jordan Love went down, Matt LaFleur was like Malik Willis is not Jordan Love, and so we have to revamp our offense around him to help, elevate his play style instead of just pretending like he's Jordan Love. And Mike McDaniel struggled to do that. Where when Tua went down, he basically tried to act like, hey, Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle or Tyler Huntley, they're just like Tua, but they're not. And so I think Mike McDaniel does need to work on his coaching. But overall, I think the Dolphins are a good team. They just got unlucky with Tua going down. And the Raiders, they're a disaster. I think Antonio Pierce will probably get fired. Like, he seems to have the locker room, like all the locker room guys really, really like him. But the issue is I just don't think he's a great head coach. And they don't have a lot of talent other than Max Crosby and probably Brock Bowers. And overall, I just think they're going to kind of blow up the whole system and see how they look next year. The next game is the Los Angeles Rams versus the New England Patriots. I do think we'll have an upset, and the Patriots are going to win. Um, I think Drake May has looked really good, and I think he especially has looked impressive because his team is so terrible. He doesn't have a number one receiver. His offensive line is not that great, and basically the whole team's terrible. And he's looked fairly decent, which is very impressive. And then the Rams, I do think they're a decent team, but sometimes when Stafford struggles, that's kind of it. Where look at last week, Kyren Williams didn't look good. The Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, they had decent moments at times, but overall they're just an okay team last week, and I just think there's just going to be an upset in this game. The next game is the New Orleans Saints versus the Cleveland Browns. I think the Saints are going to win. It was kind of interesting last week because the Saints looked pretty good, and they kind of showed where I feel like if Derek Carr didn't get injured, then they probably would have been a decent team this year. And they looked good, especially with Alvin Kamara, who I think has probably been the biggest shock of the year of how great he's been. And just overall, who knows what this team's going to look like because their defense doesn't have Marshawn Lattimore anymore, but they did step up and look good. And then with the Browns' offense, it seems like Nick Chubb might be kind of done because he really hasn't looked good since returning from his injury. And then Jameis Winston, he is just like opposite sides of the spectrum in the sense that he'll either have an amazing game or an absolutely terrible game. He will not do average. He's going to be great or terrible. And so who knows how he's going to play, but this should be a very interesting game. The next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Steelers are going to win. I think this will be a really great game because these are two of the best teams in the NFL. The Ravens' offense is one of the best, if not the best offense in the NFL, and the Steelers' defense is really great, and their offense is kind of humming along nicely. I do think the Steelers are going to win, just because the Ravens' defense has had quite a few struggles this year, and I think it might be a little bit too much to overcome in the terms of, like, the Steelers' offense, I think, is probably above average to average, and their defense is great, whereas the Ravens' offense is amazing, but their defense is just kind of average to below average. And so overall, I think the Steelers are a better team, even though the Ravens' offense is so spectacular. But this should be a very good and exciting game, and I just think the Steelers are going to win. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Tennessee Titans. I think we're going to have another upset here, and the Titans are going to win. Sam Darnold struggled a lot last week, and I think he'll struggle a lot again this week. He kind of single-handedly almost cost them the game because their offense was doing good and marching down, but then he just kept throwing interceptions in the red zone. And the Titans' defense is not that bad. And honestly, I think Will Levis is not that bad in the sense that they shouldn't give up on him just yet. The issue with him is that he basically has one incredibly stupid, game-changing, game-losing play a game. And once he does that one play, it looks horrible. But other than that one play, he usually isn't that bad. And so that kind of gives me promise where it's like, look at last week. He didn't have any of those plays, and he won. So overall, I do think it'll be an upset, and the Titans are going to win, and the Vikings are going to kind of collapse a little bit. The next game is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks. I think the 49ers are going to win. The Seahawks are struggling, and their defense is kind of struggling quite a bit. Their offense is looking a little bit better, but the 49ers, I still think they're a great team. They got unlucky with some losses, but again, I just think they're a good team. I think Ricky Pearsall looked decent. Debo looked decent. Jawan Jennings looked good. McCaffrey, he had that one great reception. Other than that, he really didn't do much. But overall, I think the 49ers are a decent team and will make the playoffs. And we'll just see how this goes. But I think the 49ers are going to win. The next game is the Atlanta Falcons versus the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos are going to win. I'm picking the Broncos just because the Falcons struggled a bit last week. Kirk Cousins had some off plays and threw a bad interception, and the Broncos defense has looked really good. They should have won last week except for the blocked field goal. Bo Nix has been fairly decent in the sense that he hasn't had that many amazing games, but he hasn't really played terrible either. He's just been average. And I think the Broncos defense is too much for the Falcons offense to overcome. I do think the Falcons are a better team and will for sure make the playoffs. It's just that I think the Broncos are going to win this game, although I think it will be pretty close. The next game is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills are going to win. This will be an interesting game. The reason I'm saying the Bills are going to win because Harrison Butker is probably the best kicker in the NFL. It's either him or Brandon Aubrey, I'd say. But Harrison Butker is not going to play this game, so that'll be interesting on how that goes. That the Chiefs might not really be able to kick field goals, and that's how they've been winning. The Chiefs are kind of reminding me of the Eagles last year and the Vikings 2 years ago, where you look at this team and you're like, this isn't a very good team, but somehow they just keep on winning. And I think the Buffalo Bills will finally be the team to beat them. I think the Bills' defense is great. Their offense, even though they struggle at times, I think their offense is pretty good. And just overall, the Chiefs, their offense struggles at times, but I like the Chiefs' defense. I think this will be an exciting game, but I'm finally saying the Bills are going to be the one to knock them off. The next game is the Cincinnati Bengals versus the LA Chargers. I think this game will be really great as well. I think the Bengals are going to win. It's interesting because the Bengals are a good team. Their defense has just been letting them down, / they've been losing to very weird plays. And Joe Burrow should be in the MVP conversation right now. He's just not because the team's not good. And so I do feel bad for him a little bit. And this will be interesting because the Chargers defense is looking really great. Herbert basically just isn't blowing it for them, and they're going through the run game. And then the Bengals offense is looking great, and their defense is looking fairly decent as well. So they're pretty evenly matched teams. I do think the Bengals are a little bit better, and it's going to be very interesting if the Bengals are able to make it to the playoffs or not. So we'll see how that goes. And then the final game of the week is the Dallas Cowboys versus the Houston Texans. I think the Cowboys are going to win. I just think the Texans are on such a downturn, and their offensive line is struggling so much, it's really letting the whole team down. And now you have Micah Parsons back. I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence is playing yet, but I just think the Cowboys' defensive line will play really well against this. And also, everyone's fighting for their jobs. Because it's looking like the Cowboys are going to kind of blow up the team after the season. Mike McCarthy might get fired. And so everyone is just fighting for their position on the team, and I think everyone wants to win so much to make sure, Mike McCarthy wants to keep his job or show other teams why he should be a head coach. And it's just going to be so interesting how the Cowboys do it. And then the Texans, CJ Stroud's been struggling quite a bit. I do think he was a little bit overhyped because his rookie year was really, really great for a rookie. But it's for a rookie. For example, if you put his rookie year and you add that to Patrick Mahomes or say Aaron Rodgers did that, you'd be like, ooh, that's kind of a down year for them. But he was great for a rookie, but now his team's got tape on him and he's no longer a rookie. He's just not playing that well. And so we'll see how this game goes. I think it will be a close one, but it'll be very interesting how it ends. So that's my predictions for Week 11 of the NFL season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. I'll see you on the next one.